Thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that. I closed my eyes. You may have seen me. I closed my eyes while he was introducing me. I thought I was being eulogized at my funeral. And you are going to speak at my funeral. That was so good. Yeah, it was fantastic. Way to go. That was really fun. I appreciate that. It's great to be back in Brisbane. I always love getting here. Last time I was here, I had the opportunity to play some golf and relax a little bit and do some other things. Queenstown, we played a little golf, had some good times. So we appreciate that. And to my partners, who I disappointed not being able to play golf this time around, we'll do it again. And Peter and I are undefeated, I should say, right, Peter? Yeah, we've never been beaten on the golf course, so if any of you want to accept the challenge, we're happy to do so. We're also very humble about our success, right? It's wonderful to be here. Thank you very much for just allowing me to come so we can have a conversation. And I hope tonight is just a good old-fashioned conversation where I get to challenge you a bit. And if you want to challenge me right back, that's fair. So the rules tonight are that if you want to interrupt me, you want to raise your hand, you want to stand up, we want to talk, you want to discuss something, I can be interrupted anytime you'd like. This session, we probably should end around 9 o'clock. We can end it sooner or we can go longer. It's entirely up to you. We'd like to create a little question and answer period at the end so that we have an opportunity to do some talking, okay, and answer the questions that you might have. And Nikki's been very helpful. We appreciate that. Thank you very much. And we've been struggling a little bit with the technology, so if anything goes wrong during the course of the evening, Nikki promises to fix it. I'll just keep talking. It'll work out just fine, okay? So as we were thinking about coming here tonight, we were talking a little bit about what we might do. And first of all, I think it's complex. My schedule's complex and difficult. I travel a great deal, and we have a big family. And so as a result of that, there's always stuff we need to be doing. And getting my schedule right is important. And I think Nikki and Felicity and Nikki, before two Nikkis and a Felicity, before you leave, I think we need to give them a round of applause just for doing such a great job of getting here. And Steve, for your introduction, my mom would have been smiling, my dad would have been disbelieving in what you just said. So it's always fun. But anyway, we can have some fun tonight. We can have some good times with each other, perhaps, but maybe I can share a little bit of my background that wasn't covered, that maybe also helps you understand a little bit about the perspective that I bring to the subjects we're going to be discussing tonight. The first of which is, I was born dirt poor. I don't know how many of you in the room are born poor, but I was born poor. On an isolated farm in a state called Minnesota, near the Canadian border, where we raised cattle and crops and grain. We had no indoor plumbing and we had no electricity. We had one wood-burning stove in degrees of 40 degrees below zero, and temperatures that got pretty cold at different times and pretty hot at different times. Would you like a chair?
No, I'm just...
We have two of them here that aren't being used. If you're going to sit like that all night, it's going to be a difficult evening.
That's okay. It's just once you get going.
Okay. All right. So it's going to be a few minutes before we get going.
Okay.
All right. You okay there?
Adam,
Adam, it's been good to see you. Yeah. Adam, there's a chair over here. Why don't you try that, okay? Yeah, good. Give Adam a round of applause. He can move. So I was born really poor, and so for me, it's such an honor to be able to stand in front of a group of CEOs, their spouses, and significant others, and be able to stand here and talk. Because this isn't where I was supposed to be. I should still be on that farm in Minnesota. And just like others who are born into poverty around the world, some people get locked into that and can't ever get out of it. And I was fortunate to be able to have other experiences in life. And some of those experiences were just recounted to you, and I'll probably tell some stories about some of that stuff tonight, whether it's the White House or other things, and as a way of sharing my journey through life and the lessons that I've learned and the things that I hope that you can learn tonight, if you choose to, that you could start tomorrow morning with the very tools and principles we're going to talk about tonight. If you want to change your life, you can start tomorrow morning. So it's going to be real, it's going to be practical, okay? And it's going to be philosophically based and principle based. And so we'll have an interesting discussion about that, and we'll talk a little bit to see how it goes. So, but when I was 10 or 11 years old, my parents decided to stop farming. We moved out to Southern California to a place called Newport Beach, California. Anybody know where Newport Beach is? It's the heart of surfing in Southern California. So as a 10, 11-year-old, I suddenly discovered there were 10, 11-year-old girls, and they were on the beach, and they wore bikinis, and I thought I had died and gone to heaven. I thought this was the greatest thing that ever happened. And so I started surfing. And I had a great time doing that, and somebody introduced me to a basketball, which I'd never seen in my life, and I started dribbling that. And when I was about 18 years old, somebody came to me and said, you know, if you'll dribble a basketball at the University of Arizona, we'll pay for your education. I'm not very smart, but I thought that was a heck of a deal. All I had to do was dribble a basketball, and I get a free education. So I thought that was fantastic. So I went down to the University of Arizona. About the third day I was there, a mutual friend of mine and another person introduced me to the most beautiful young woman I've ever seen in my entire life. And she's this great smile, very intelligent, magnificently put together. I mean, just fantastic, right? So I thought she was just gorgeous. And of course, I asked her out right away. I just asked her for a date. And she said no. And I couldn't believe it. I'm just great-looking, chiseled out of granite kind of guy. I mean, I couldn't believe that she would say no to me. And so I asked her out the next week, and she said no again. And the next week, no again. And the next week, no again. She said no to me 53 consecutive weeks. And finally, in the 54th week, I knew that the guy she was dating was out of town for his parents' wedding anniversary. So I knew she was open, right? I had a chance. So I went to her and I said, "Will you just have dinner with me?" And of course, she said no again for the 54th time. And sometimes guys, when that happens, we get stupid and we do dumb stuff. And so I knelt down and I was doing all kinds of funny stuff, getting her to laugh, and finally said, "Okay, I'll have dinner with you." By 10:30 that night, we had determined we never had to see anybody else again. We got married 2 years later and started our journey together. And we celebrated our 55th wedding anniversary 3 weeks ago. So I think it all works, okay? So it all makes sense and it all works, and I think sometimes we just have to work really hard for the things that we want. I knew right away that she was the one for me. It took her about a year to figure that out. And I'm not so sure she still figured it out. On our wedding anniversary, every year on our wedding anniversary, I'm looking for a long-term contract. You know what I mean? I want a 10-year contract in this deal. And every year she gives me a 1-year contract. And on the bottom it says, "You're still on probation." Okay? So I don't know what I can do to make her happy, but we keep working at it. So we decided that we wanted to have a big family. And as a result of that, we decided we were going to have 15 children. And we decided on 15 for 2 reasons. One, it was the jersey that I wore playing basketball, 15, number 15. And secondly, it was also my IQ, she said. So I thought that it would work out really well. So we decided to have 15 children. We started into our marriage, and we were practicing really hard to have kids. And practicing is really fun to have kids. I don't know if you've ever tried that, but it's really an exciting thing. And so we decided to practice, and we practiced and practiced, and we finally came to the conclusion when our doctors told us that it was biologically impossible for the 2 of us to have our children. It would never work, and we were greatly disappointed. The end result of that was we were excited and enthusiastic, so we decided to adopt, and we got ready by getting licensed by the state of Arizona to be adoptive parents. And we went to a party one night, kind of like this, and there was a young geneticist there from Harvard who'd moved to our city, and he talked about fertility and other things, and he said, "If I put you both in the hospital, we'll check you out." And then he released me, and he had to keep my wife in for a couple of days to reconnect the wiring and the plumbing, and I don't know what the technical terms are for that, but anyway, do some stuff. And then she got out, and 30 days later, she was pregnant with our first child, and every 2 years a baby came. So it was fantastic. And the only problem I have is they all look like the doctor. So it's a difficult thing. So I'm a little concerned about that. And I'm afraid that I travel a little too much because he makes house calls. So maybe that's why I don't get a long-term contract. So we ended up having 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl. We have 19 grandchildren. We all live together on a 60-acre parcel in the center of Tucson, Arizona. And all of our children will build homes there, and we love living there. And we were totally surprised when our kids decided they wanted to live with us. And it's every parent's dream, probably, to have their children close to them. And we felt that way. We'd raised a really fun, happy family. And after they all went away to college, they all lived abroad for a couple of years. They all did their thing. They had careers started. They came back and said, we're so close together as a family, and we love being with each other as siblings. How would you feel if we built homes on this property? Pretty easy answer. And so we said, absolutely. So we've got all of our kids and grandkids right there with us, 3-generation family, which is pretty unusual in America. Pretty unusual. Not so unusual in other parts of the world, but pretty unusual. So I was reading a newspaper a while back, and in this newspaper article, it was a mention of EO. And I just thought I'd bring it to you tonight. It's kind of interesting. Many of you remember a syndicated columnist globally by the name of Ann Landers. And you could write into her and ask her questions about your marriage and family and friendships, and she would give advice in these columns that she wrote. And in one of these columns, EO appeared, so I just thought I'd share it with you. It says, "Dear Ann Landers, I have a problem. My brother was just paroled after serving 25 years for murder. My other brother is a member of EO. My mother died from insanity when I was very young. My 2 sisters are prostitutes, and my father keeps the family with their earnings. I've just met a young man I really like. Here's my problem. How do I explain to him about my brother who's a member of EO?" So every once in a while when you get to feel cocky, you think you're really cool, something like that comes along and knocks us down, right? So as I was thinking about what we might discuss tonight, I was reminded that we live in this exponential society, and we live in a society that's going faster and faster. And for some, it's leaving them behind. For others, can keep up. But for many, it's a source of frustration and difficulty and challenge. And there's a pastor of a church in Seattle, Washington, by the name of Dr. Robert Moreland. He wrote about our contemporary society. And I thought in his writings that it might resonate with you, and so I wanted to share this with you. The paradox of our time in history is that we have taller buildings, but shorter tempers, wider freeways, but narrower viewpoints. We spend more, but have less. We buy more, but enjoy less. We have bigger houses and smaller families, more conveniences, but less time. We have more degrees, but less sense, more knowledge, but less judgment, more experts, yet more problems, more medicine, but less wellness. We drink too much, smoke too much, spend too recklessly, laugh too little, and drive too fast. We get too angry, stay up too late, get up too tired, read too little, watch TV too much, and pray too seldom. We have multiplied our possessions, but reduced our values. We talk too much, love too seldom, and hate too often. We've learned how to make a living, but not a life. We've added years to life, but not life to years. Pretty interesting commentary on where contemporary society around the globe is today. And we may agree or disagree about that, but I think it's interesting to contemplate and think about. Robert Moreland, Dr. Robert Moreland, M-O-R-E-L-A-N-D. Now, you know a bit about me because I told you something about me, and perhaps you'll learn more about me as we go through this evening because I like to share stories. And I don't know that much about you. I know some of you in the audience because we've had a chance to meet and spend some time together. But there's been a study recently between the Harvard Business School and the Harvard Medical School, a joint study trying to determine the highest level characteristics and attributes of entrepreneurs in the world. It's a global study. 10,000 entrepreneurs were studied. And they wanted to distill these characteristics and qualities down to 4 simple signs or symbols. And so I'm going to put these 4 signs or symbols up here. I'm going to give you 8 seconds to study them, and in those 8 seconds you will resonate with one of those. Viscerally, chemically, you will react to one of those. It'll be your sign. And then I'll just go back through them, and as I point to it, you can raise your hand and say if that's your sign, and that way we can identify those qualities and characteristics together. Is that okay? Do you understand the thing? Okay. Now, so these signs are pretty simple. One is a circle, and that doesn't have any ink. Let's try this one. This one's still a circle, a Z, a triangle, and a square. Now, you have 8 seconds to see which you identify with. Okay, time's up. Now, can you see them all right? Now, when we go back through those, I'm going to ask you to vote for one as I point to it. If you don't vote for any, it means you have no personality. Is that fair? If you vote for 2, it means you have a split personality. Okay, so do we understand the rules? You get to vote for 1. Is that fair? Okay. So let's go in reverse order here. How many think the square best typifies you? Just raise your hand. 3. Okay. This is high IQ or intelligence. Okay? How many of you think of triangle? Okay, about 20 of you. Creativity. How many of you think the Z pattern? Even more. You're really confident now, aren't you? About 25 or 30 or so. This is innate, inherent leadership skills and abilities. And how many of you think the circle best typifies you? Raise your hand. Another 25 or so. This means you're absolutely committed to booze and sex. Let's see those circles again. Raise your hand. Let's be proud. Yeah. All right. Both hands up. You're just so proud, right? All right. So now here's my conundrum this evening, right? We have 3 people with a high IQ, and we've got about 25 or high on booze and sex. I have no idea what to talk with you about tonight, okay? But I will use small words and short sentences so all of the rest of you who are circles will understand what I'm talking about, all right? How's it going so far? This may or may not work. Whether it does or not, we'll keep talking. So there was this young couple that bought a new home, and in their home they had a bank of windows like this, and they had their breakfast nook or coffee table right by those windows. And so every morning when they'd come down for coffee, they would talk a bit, and they would then, Guy, come on in. You want to look for a seat?
Nice to meet you, man.
Hey, good to see you. How you doing? Oh, this is all about the technology. Yeah, that's right, IT. So this is all about this couple coming down, and as they would come down to these windows, they would look into their neighbor's backyard. And when they looked into their neighbor's backyard, they could see the woman of the house next door hanging out laundry when it was sunny like it is today in Brisbane. And the laundry would dry by natural sunlight. And the woman would say to her husband as they're having coffee, it's too bad that the lady doesn't know how to wash clothes. All of her clothes are dirty. It's just a shame no one's taught her how to wash clothes. And this would happen day after day after day. And finally one morning they came down to have their coffee. They looked into the next backyard area. The woman was hanging out the clothes. And the lady exclaimed to her husband as they had coffee, look, somebody taught her how to wash clothes. The clothes are clean. And the husband said, well, not really. I came down early and washed the windows. When we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. So tonight I'm asking you to take out the lens through which you see your life, the lens through which you have beliefs, and clean it off really well and pop it back in. Because the way you look at things may not be the way things are, and things may be changing. And so we don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Everything we process through filters, and those filters determine our thoughts about how we shape our environment, how we shape our future. Our very thoughts are delegated and contributed to by how these filters that we have. So we'll continue to work on that and make sure that is helpful to us. You got it? We're counting on you. There's a really interesting book called Living a Life That Matters, written by a man named Harold Kushner. And in it, he makes an interesting statement. And I think of EOers, and I think of us as business leaders when I read this quote, and I thought I might share it with you tonight. Our souls are not hungry for fame, comfort, wealth, or power. Our souls are hungry for meaning, for the sense that I've figured out how to live so that our lives matter, so that the world will be at least a little bit different for our having passed through it. I think there's a greater calling in life than making money. I actually think making money is the easy part of life. Building businesses is relatively simple. Serving other people and helping other people is hard. And that's what we need to be about. That's what our lives need to be about. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in the context of being our best self tonight. So something you should know about my wife. She's the toughest lady I've ever met. She's really strong. And I'll give you an indication that we had returned from a trip from Australia, actually. This is, by the way, this is my 50th anniversary trip to Australia. So it's just been fabulous. And I can tell you, I date back to 1980, my first trip, and how the cities in this country has changed in so many ways, and yet remained the same in so many other ways. What's remained the same is the quality of the people who live here. If I had to choose a place other than the United States of America to live, I would live in Australia. It's an extraordinary place, and you always ought to feel blessed to live in this country with the people and the countrymen you have around you. It's phenomenal. And you are so warm and gracious to people like me who come here because we love this country. So thank you for your hospitality. We really appreciate it. But as we think about where we're going and how we're going to get there, we have to have life partners and spouses that help us get there. And my wife is such a person. She's very strong, very dedicated, very committed. She's exactly what I thought she was when I fell in love with her the very first day that I met her. And fortunately for me, we ended up married together and having all these children and grandchildren. It's been a fun ride, and it continues to be. But we came home from Australia, and we'd had a lot of plane changes and cancellations and a lot of time in airports, and it took us about 30 hours to get back to our home, and finally we were in our own bed. And it's just fun to get back in your own bed after you've been traveling for a long time. You know, you feel relaxed, and we're lying there in bed, and we're holding hands, and we're facing each other, and our eyes connect. And, you know, guys like that, we get romantic, and we ask those deep philosophical questions, right? Like, if I died, would you marry again? You know, those deep philosophical questions. And so I decided to ask her, I said, honey, if I lose everything, if I lose the cars, the boats, the planes, the stocks, the bonds, the condominium, the ranch, if I lose everything, would you still love me? She paused for a moment, then she said, yes, I'd still love you, and I'd miss you too. I think she was saying, don't take me for granted, but I'm not sure, okay? So we've had a fun time together. You know, in 1926, Charles Lindbergh, y'all know who Charles Lindbergh was? Flew across the Atlantic Ocean, single-engine plane. What did everybody tell him before he left? It won't work, you can't do it, you're never going to make it. Right? Because it was something that had never been done. And oftentimes we run up against things that have never been done, and our immediate reaction is it can't be done. And we all know now, we should know by now in our own world, that's just not true. Almost everything you can imagine can be done. Anything man can imagine can happen. And so in 1926, he took a little tiny plane, basically a gasoline tank with an engine on it, and flew it across the Atlantic Ocean. And when he landed near Paris, the press were there and everybody's asking him all kinds of questions. He made an interesting statement. He said, we live today, actually, in our dreams of yesterday. And by so living, we live to dream again. The fact that you're here and everything you've accomplished in your lifetime are the dreams you had yesterday. That's brought you here today. The dreams you have tonight, today, tomorrow, is the future that you'll live in. So dreaming is really important. Understanding that we have total capacity, understanding that we can be anything we want to be is critical. Remember, I'm the little kid that was born poor on a Minnesota farm. So I believe that anything is possible. I think we can accomplish anything. So there isn't anything that you could mention to me that isn't possible. And I recall that in 1963, when I was a student at the University of Arizona, a man named John Kennedy stood behind a lectern and said, we're going to land a man on the moon in this century and bring him back safely again. No one believed that was possible. And 6 years later, and we just celebrated the 50th anniversary 3 weeks ago of Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon. 6 years after he made that statement, the United States landed a man on the moon and walked on the moon. Everything is possible. In my lifetime, before I die, and I'm 76 years old, before I die, we will send a mission to Mars. Doesn't that seem impossible? Nothing is impossible. So tonight, as we gather here as a bunch of EOers, a bunch of leaders of companies, a bunch of spouses and significant others, let's have an open mind. And there's a great Buddhist word called shoshin. Shoshin means having an open mind, being a willing learner, being a beginning learner. Let's always have that mindset. And if we have that mindset, we have the opportunity to do it. The counter to that is being an expert. An expert is more and more narrow, more narrowly focused, thinking they're always right, oftentimes not embracing what's possible. Because in the moonshot, in Charles Lindbergh's flying of the Atlantic Ocean, there were more naysayers than there were supporters. There were more people disbelieving than were believing. And that's always going to be true. And I bet that's true in your business. I bet that's true as you invent new products, new markets, channels of distribution, all kinds of stuff that you do. So I think that opportunity is there for us. Now, if you take a single pound of iron, let's say it's worth $20 on the open market today. If you make that piece of iron into horseshoes, it's worth about $80. If you take that same 1 pound of iron and make it into needles, it's worth about $4,000. If you take that same pound of iron worth $20 and make it into precision balanced wheels for fine watches, it's worth about $250,000. But we start with the same commodity, the same critical mass. That's who we are. We can shape ourselves. We can be as valuable as we want to be. We can be extraordinary and remarkable if we want to be. And we want to talk about how some of those principles work and what we can do. So as we go through this presentation tonight, I hope you'll observe some of the principles we're going to talk about, the actions you can take, things and ways you can change your life. There are some of you in this audience who have already done that, with whom I've shared time previously in Queenstown, for example, when we had a great session. And I think I was actually with the EO chapter here about 2 years ago. Were any of you in the room 2 or 3 years ago when we talked about some stuff? Okay, so this is an extension of all the things we talk about all the time, because of this notion that we can be anything we want to be. So let's talk a little bit about this escalator called leadership and life. And how do we show up every day as our best self? How do we do that? Now, there may be 1 or 2 of you in the room who don't show up as your best self every day. You maybe get up a little grumpy some days. You may get up a little angry some days. You may, it's always somebody else's fault, isn't it? It's never your fault for being unhappy. It's always somebody else's fault. There are 2 kinds of people that wake up in the morning, right? There's a person who leaps out of bed, throws back the covers, jumps out and says, "Good morning, Lord," and they're ready for the challenge of the new day. There's the other person that peeks out from under the covers and says, "Good Lord, it's morning." You have to decide which one you're going to be. Only you decide. Nobody decides for you, and there are no excuses in life. Okay? No excuses in life. So as we talk about going up this escalator, we'll talk about these various levels. We want to talk about a bit about the principles of leadership and what that means and how we think about that, because I believe leadership is for all of us in the room. Whether we're leading a company or not, we are all leaders in our own right. We lead children. We lead extended families. We lead not-for-profits. We lead community-based organizations of different types. All of us are leaders in different ways. We may have different titles, but we all have that same connotation. We all have that same understanding. So as we think about leadership, let's think about what that means, okay? First principle of leadership is to understand the value of time. Understand the value of time. It's the one commodity that people take for granted, and yet it's finite. It's not unlimited. How many days, weeks, months, years do you have in your life? Do you know? None of us know. I hope you all get to at least 76 so you can be my age. I'm the oldest one in the room by far, I'm sure, and proud to be. There are a lot of miles on this body, right? And it's still ticking, it's going strong. And it's going to be for a long period of time. But do you know how much time you have left? Do you know how many seconds are in a day? It just happens to be 86,400 seconds a day. They go away at midnight. If you're lucky, you get 86,400 seconds more, but each of us knows people in our life who didn't get that. They could be called grandparents, parents, good friends. And so we have to value every day and every second that we have. It's a fundamental principle of leadership. The 6 presidents that I worked for didn't talk about time in hours, they talk about it in minutes. I managed the time for a president of the United States, everything they did every day, and I can tell you that every second matters. There's a limited amount of time to do what we want to do. Therefore, efficiency and effectiveness go together. We have to be both efficient with time and we have to be effective with time. And so if we get into it a little bit later, I can show you or teach you a scheduling system that we use for the President of the United States. It's been used by every single president since we created it in 1974, with the exception of the current occupant of the White House, who has his own concept of time. So in your lifetime, if you live to be as old as I am, you live 700,000 hours, 28,000 days. You choose. It's all about the choices we make as to how valuable our life is, how mundane it is, how fun it is, how exciting it is, because we make all the choices with the time that we have. Now, what I've found with most EOers and most CEOs generally is you all think you're really good. Most of you are really frivolous with time. I currently mentor 22 EOers. And each of those EOers, the first thing we do is we do a 3-week time log. We analyze everything that they do, and we put it in 4 buckets: family, business, community, and self. Almost everything we do fits in one of those 4 buckets. We analyze it by hours and percentage of time. I can take any one of your schedules in this room and I'll give you back 25% of your time. That's how frivolous you are with time. Because you all have time management systems, it's just that you don't use them very well. There are hundreds of thousands of different time management systems. Everybody's created a time management system. Actually, it's quite simple to manage time. You always work on your highest priorities. If you always work on your highest priorities, you'll have unbelievable success. If you get sucked into urgent and crisis and mundane and routine and minutia, you just never will have the success you want to have. Your life will stagnate. You can't understand why you're frustrated. It'll be difficult for you. But managing time is absolutely essential if you want to be extraordinary. The second principle of life is the importance of our life experiences, and knowing that all of us, 7.2 billion people on the face of the earth, all have different life experiences. We all have different stories. We have different genetic makeup, different DNA. None of us have the same fingerprints. Even identical twins don't have the same fingerprints. We are all different. Everyone in this room is a unique creature. And we have to understand the importance of those life experiences, right? We're the sum total of those life experiences, and we have to apply those in a positive, coherent, cohesive way to affect our lives and our success. Just having them isn't enough. Understanding their meaning is what's important, and applying that meaning and those lessons learned to your future. And when we do that, you accelerate your growth. You change your trajectory by doing that. Does that make sense to you? Just by absorbing your life experience, learning what you can from them, and then applying that to future circumstance. When you do that, you change that game, okay? Aristotle knew from the very beginning, we are what we repeatedly do. We are what our habits and patterns are, okay? So regardless of what rituals you have or patterns or habits you have in your life, the only way you can make progress is to change out those that are less than optimal for those that give you optimization. So if you have, how many of you have at least one thing you'd like to change about your life? I can raise both hands. Okay, we all have stuff we want to change about our life. So the question is, why don't you? Why haven't you? Don't have time, too lazy, don't care, don't know how. All you need to do is read a book by Charles Duhigg. It's called The Power of Habit. It's all the research, all the information you need to know about how to change patterns, change habits in our lives. And if we can't change the patterns, we can't change the outcome. Our life will remain the same. If we keep doing the same things, right? Einstein and Henry Ford said it the same way. If you always do what you've always done, you always get what you've always gotten. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, thinking you're going to get a different outcome. You don't get different outcomes if you do the same stuff, right? So we have to do things differently. So what we repeatedly do is really critical. The third is understanding life's challenges, because we all get them. Think I had any challenges going from a black dirt farm in Minnesota to the White House, to the NBA, to running 17 companies, to sitting on 50 boards of directors? You think there are any challenges there? Holy cow, I am battered and bruised. All kinds of challenges. That's the nature of life. Adversity is part of life. You're not going to get it free, clean, without bumps and bruises. It's how we treat those. It's how we learn from those. It's what we do with them that's the difference maker in character and achievement. It's interesting to know that almost all of the American presidents were born poor. Only a handful weren't. And so maybe there's something about being poor. Maybe I should have been president. That was a possibility. Okay? So what we see is we get economic meltdowns. You all are in kind of a stagnating economy right now, little ups and downs. I'm simply amazed at how often you can successfully change prime ministers. It's really fantastic. It's just, I'm just waiting for the next opportunity. This is getting to be like the UK, for crying out loud, right? How long will Boris last? It's just really an interesting discussion. So this whole notion is that, you know, this change and these challenges come about us, and one of these is the economic meltdown that was started in 2008, 2009 in the United States and affected the entire globe. And we're all still suffering from it to some degree. And of the companies that we were running and owning at the time, they were all touched by that economic downturn in some way, just like yours probably were. You all were late to go into that downturn. We kind of led the world in that thing, and then you guys came in a little bit later, and you're coming out of it a little bit slower. So it's just part of it. It was a 10-year run. It was a difficult decade. And we are now starting to slow down in the United States again. In my lifetime, I've lived through 13 recessions. So you learn a few things as a businessman when you're going through that. You learn a little bit about what you have to do or not do. In addition to that, we have political chaos everywhere. The election of dictators in some countries, life terms like President Xi in China, president forever. We change them out every 6 weeks in other countries, finding new leaders, right? Or we recycle the old ones. That's always interesting to do, isn't it? So this notion is there's just a lot of stuff going on right now, and we better be paying attention, because the world is changing exponentially as well. Not just us, not just technology, not just things we see, but the entire world, the entire globe is going through a fundamental realignment. And do we understand that? And do we understand how that affects our lives, our businesses, our countries? Pretty important to appreciate. We also have global tragedies. I don't know about you, but it seems to me that we've got more global tragedies than we've ever seen. The fact is, they're accelerating as well. We just went through a hurricane on the east coast of the United States. We had tsunami in Aceh province. We had the earthquake off Japan that shut down a nuclear reactor. Tornadoes in the midwestern part of the United States. The weather is unbelievable all over the world. Did you actually have winter this year? Or was it just kind of summer? Just kind of summer. I live in Arizona. You have no idea hot. The temperature has risen 3.5 degrees in the last 15 years in Arizona. We're having the last 15 years in the southwestern part of the United States has been the hottest in recorded history and getting warmer. It's changing everything about the planet. They just had a funeral in Greenland, the very first glacier to completely disappear. They had a funeral for it last week. A 6 square mile glacier that existed for all recorded time is no longer. So life is changing. Global tragedies. Climate change is real. In spite of what our president says, there are a whole bunch of us that thinks things are going on, okay? So as we look at that, how do we approach this? What should we do? How do we think about it? How do we contextualize it? What's the paradigm within which we live our lives that makes sense out of all this stuff? Well, there's a book that you may want to read. It's considered the best book ever written on leadership. It's not an easy read, but it's a great read. The book title is Leadership by James McGregor Burns. James McGregor Burns. And in that book, he talks about, if you don't have time to read the whole book, you go to pages 82 and 83, it talks about the difference between transactional and transformational leadership. Transactional leadership is kind of what we do every day. It's those 100 things we do every day. We do them a little bit better, a little bit differently, and people think we're a leader. Transformational leadership, though, is quite different. Transformational leadership is this notion that you take that which lies unconscious in the human condition and raise it to a conscious state. Now, can you think of any transformational leaders throughout history that would come to mind as we think about leadership? Who would come to your mind? Let me give you an easy one, Mandela. Okay, who else? Hitler in a negative way. Leadership is neutral. The person makes it positive or negative. Leadership is neutral, right? So Hitler took leadership and made it negative, right? So you got Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Winston Churchill, Mother Teresa, Mandela, we said, right? Those are the kinds of, pardon me?
Johnny Howard.
John Howard had a good 12-year run, didn't he? He did some interesting things. Transformational, I'm not so sure, but certainly exceptional. But it's this notion, the question for me and for us here tonight is, which one are you? Are you a transactional leader or a transformational leader? And that's true whether you're a mother or a father, a CEO, a lifetime partner. It's this notion of what kind of leader are we? Understanding life's challenges, understanding leadership to the extent we can define ourselves is really important. We all would like to be transformational leaders. We can aspire to that. We can actually learn how to do that. But it really comes from the heart and the gut and intuition. And it's great movements. Gandhi was protesting salt prices because the poor couldn't get salt. And so he started marching all by himself, his robes, his sandal, and his staff. He marched 247 miles. And what he started by himself, he had almost 1 million people on the road with him when he finished. It turned over the government. Britain ultimately left. They became self-governing. He went to the UK to give a speech. He was invited there by Parliament. And so he went to give a speech. He spoke for 3 hours without a single note, without looking at a single piece of paper, eloquently, articulately. And when it was over and he walked outside Parliament, of course, the media, the press wanted to know, how can you speak so well, so fluently, so articulately, with no notes? And he said, because what I say is what I believe, and what I believe is how I act. Isn't that a simple way of living our lives? What I say is what I believe. What I believe is how I act. Couldn't we all live better like that? Couldn't we all be transformational leaders if we did that? Well, so as we think further about how to achieve greatness, because I suspect all of you in the room would like to be great. All of us really would like to be really good at what we do, whatever it is we choose to do. I want to be the best husband, the best father, the best grandfather in the world. That's my goal in life, is to get a medal for doing that. You know, I work every day at that, and you all who have children know how hard that is. That's a big challenge, right? And so it's just one of those things. What's our notion of achievement of greatness? Well, as we think about how we might look at that, we might think a little bit about a man who was walking down the street one day, and he observed a construction site. And at that construction site, there were 3 men who were working. And as he observed them, he noticed they were all doing exactly the same thing. And so he asked the first man, "Sir, what is it you're doing?" And he said, "Well, I'm squaring a brick." He asked the second man, who was doing exactly the same thing as the first man, "Sir, what is it you're doing?" He said, "I'm finishing a wall." He asked the third man, who was doing exactly the same thing as the first 2 men, "Sir, what is it you're doing?" He said, "I'm building a great cathedral." We are driven by the vision of our work. The smaller the vision, the less the achievement. The greater the vision, the greater the work. So an appreciation for the notion that vision really matters. Greatness is not a function of circumstance. Greatness is a choice, and it's discipline. And all of us can do it. All of us. Remember the world of possibilities. All of us can do it. No one is handed the gift of greatness, only the opportunity for greatness. So it's not a circumstance. It's a choice, and it's discipline. When Bill Gates dropped out of Harvard at 19 years old because he had an idea, do you remember what his idea was? Put a PC in every home. His stated objective was put a PC in every home. Did he achieve his objective? Pretty doggone close, didn't he? At 19 years of age, he had a vision. Had the PC been invented yet? No. He and his colleagues invented the PC. He had a vision about something that hadn't been done yet. Does that remind you of flying across the Atlantic? Putting a man on the moon? It's all possible. It's all possible. Never let anything stop you from thinking what you want to become or want to achieve. Well, greatness has to go through crisis. It's the test of fire. I don't know about you, but I've been through the test of fire multiple times. And sometimes things get tough and painful and hard. And sometimes we can't see beyond that harshness, that difficulty, that challenge. Some of you may be going through that in this room right now tonight, where you can't see. It's vague, it's murky, because the crisis of the moment is so intense and it's so difficult. I've been there, I've done that. I went to work every day for 2 years thinking that was the day I'd file for personal bankruptcy. Every day battling lawyers, businessmen, insurance companies, accountants. I never once told my wife that I was going through it. Why wouldn't I do that? Because she was raising 7 children. She had all the battles she needed. And to add one more would be piling on. And I decided not to do that, so I dressed up every day and with a cheerful smile said goodbye, honey, gave her a kiss, and headed off to the office, where it was hand-to-hand combat. You just fight the battles we have to fight. At the end of 2 years, we came out just fine. We won the battle. Okay? But you have to be willing to fight the battle. And even though you can't see, Martin Luther King said, faith is taking the first step and not being able to see the whole staircase. Sometimes we just have to put one foot in front of the other. We just have to keep going, and we'll see more clearly as we fight the battle. But we can't always see that. So greatness comes through crisis. We discover who we are in crisis. I think it's more defining than anything else we do. I think life really gets our attention when we get hit in the face. When somebody says, you got to file bankruptcy. When our lawyers told me you got to file bankruptcy, it got my attention. I said, I don't think I'm going to do that. That's a lifetime mark against me. Not going to happen. Where's the battlefield? Let's go. Okay? So you get through it. Gets your attention, right? And individual greatness, I believe, emerges out of those kinds of challenges. Harshness, sometimes, the fire that we have to go through makes us better in every way. Not just smarter. It sometimes makes us more sensitive. Sometimes it makes us more purposeful, more dedicated, more committed, right? It certainly challenges our character, certainly challenges who we are. So I think that this opportunity that we have to have challenges is very real. I often tell our children, I hope you have adversity. I hope you get to feel the harshness of life, because it will refine you, it'll make you better, it'll make you stronger as a leader. When I was sitting on my father's lap, driving on those John Deere tractors through the cornfields and plowing ground and stuff when I was 5, 6, and 7, My dad was talking to me about the opera and Broadway plays and geography and political leaders and all kinds of stuff. He had 2 college degrees. He was very smart, but he loved to farm. I'm not sure he was a good farmer, but he loved to farm. And so he was teaching me, but he was teaching me for about that life that he didn't want me to have. He wanted me to be able to move from the farm, and so he was coaching and teaching me. And he told me a poem one time when I was about 6 years old that for some reason stuck in my head. I think I'd rather not think, for thinking is like a disease. I know I'd rather not know, for stupidity comes with such ease. And not so much stupid as content with the state, going through the day knowing only that I ate. But to think means to live, and to live means to do, and doing is what is done, but only by a few. Most people are talkers. Very few people are doers. Most people talk a good game. Get them out on the golf course and see how they fare, Peter. So we define greatness. It doesn't define us. We choose. It's not circumstantial. We choose greatness. And how many in the room, in the quiet of your own mind right now, can make the choice for greatness? Can make the choice to be the difference maker? Can make the choice to be extraordinary and remarkable. And whether that's being a great mom, a great brother, a great sister, a great friend, a great CEO, a great leader in your community. You choose that. No one chooses that for you. There's this notion that we can remake ourselves. You know, Gandhi was the guy who said it, right? Our greatness lies not in our ability to change the world. It lies in our ability to change ourselves. We have to start here in our own hearts and our own minds. Greatness starts here. It's not a position we hold. It's how we lead our lives. It's what we do with those lives. All of you are here because you deserve to be here. All of you in this room because you've done something extraordinary and remarkable. I'm honored and I respect you that you would be here, take time tonight just to listen to me. You could be doing so many other things. When I was in the White House, there was a company by the name of TRW. Anyone know TRW? It's a global company. They make aerospace parts and rockets and satellites and stuff like that. And when they were a young company, back in the early 70s, they had developed some special technology for a spy satellite to be launched by the United States. The R in TRW is a man, the founder, named Ramo. And he came to the White House to explain to the president about this rocket and this spy satellite. So I arranged for it, and I was in the Oval Office with the president, just 3 of us in there. And Mr. Ford sat down, and I sat down, and he asked Mr. Ramo to sit down. Mr. Ramo was too excited to sit down, because the next day they were launching at Cape Kennedy a $500 million spy satellite, and he had borrowed all the money to do it. It was going to make his company. It would absolutely establish him in the defense industry if they could get this satellite in space, and they were so excited about it. He had leveraged everything possible to get this spy satellite. He had bet his company on this one venture. And he was explaining it to the president how it worked, and he was so excited and clapping his hands and doing everything. And finally he said, "Mr. President, I'd like you to come down with me tomorrow to Cape Kennedy to see the launch." The president said, "Well, I got a couple other things I got to do. I'm negotiating nuclear treaties. I got a couple other things. But I'm sure Warren would like to go," and he points to me. I'm 29 years old. I'm the little farm kid. I've never seen a rocket launch. I am so excited he pointed to me. This is great. I'm going down to see a rocket launch. I am fired up. I am really ready. So we get in his private jet. We're flying down to Cape Kennedy, down to Florida from Washington, D.C., and I strap on my seatbelt. He never once buckled his seatbelt. He never sat down, pacing up and down, clapping, cheering, ready. He just fired up, excited, had some employees on the plane. We got down on the VIP reviewing stand. Off in the distance was this absolutely majestic rocket. Beautiful Florida sunlight. On top of that was a $500 million spy satellite to be launched in space. It was going to make TRW's company. And he had his employees down there, and they were cheering, and they were screaming and yelling. They couldn't wait. And finally, the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Clouds of smoke come out from beneath the rocket. Flames come out. The rocket lifts slowly off the launch pad. 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, 50 feet. At about 50 feet, it blows into 1,000,000 pieces. Totally destroyed. And I'm just devastated. I'm looking over Mr. Rainbow, and I expect to see a man who's discouraged and depressed and distraught. But he's just cheering up and down and excited. And I said, "Mr. Rainbow, what is it?" He said, "Well, we know it can fly. We just have to improve its range." You know, you're all in the room because you can fly. That's why you're here. That's why you're an EO. That's why you're a CEO. That's why you're a leader. That's why you're moms and dads. You've already proven you can fly. Life isn't about whether you get airborne or not. Life is about your range. It's how deep you go. It's how high you go. Can you make the difference? Or do you blow up on the launch pad? You all are capable. That's why you're in the room. That's why you're part of this great global organization. You're difference makers. But have you stopped to think about what your range is? How far you're going? How you're going to get there? And the difference you're going to make? Well, as we think further about leadership, why would I possibly suggest to you that you're not doing enough and that you ought to change? By the way, if I haven't said so, I think you're all about 25% short of being really good. We aren't, you and I, if we were having a canned conversation, I would say to you, you're not doing all you should be doing. And I'd be right in every one of your cases. None of you have tapped out. None of you have maxed out. None of you are doing absolutely the best work you can do. The best work is still ahead of you. And you got to get it done. You got to step up to it. Cruising through life isn't what life's all about. Accepting big challenges is what life's all about. Doing big things is what life's all about. And I'm saying to you, you're not doing enough. And I'm suggesting to you, you ought to change. You ought to get better. You ought to start tomorrow morning. Okay? First of all, you got to change because you won't survive if you don't. The world's just spinning. It's going fast. And for us to survive and be successful, you have to change. Okay? Secondly is, I think you want to eliminate some bad habits, some bad practices. Several of you raised your hand and say, if you could change one thing about your life, you'd want to change one thing, right? I got a couple of things I need to change to get better. I'm sure each of us does. That's part of your survival, right? You got to eliminate bad habits, and each of us have them. How many of you rolled over this morning and said, I don't feel like working out today? Okay? Nobody cares. It only matters to you if you work out or not. Nobody cares whether you feel bad about not working out. Hit the snooze button, roll over. None of you would ever do anything like that because you're all just got a trajectory going to the stars. You'd never do anything like that because that'll slow you down, right? And when you get rid of a bad habit, you can replace it with a good habit. So if you're not working out, start working out. If you're not eating right, start eating right. If you're not getting enough sleep, get enough sleep. If you're yelling at your kids, stop yelling at your kids. If you're yelling at your spouse or partner, stop it. Nothing happens good out of yelling. So let's just stop the bad habits. Let's develop some good habits, okay? So why change? Because I think you got to get the rocks out of your backpack. And here's what I mean by that. It's a metaphor for life. When we send our little kids off to school, even starting in preschool and kindergarten, they got to have backpacks, or they got to have little things they pull along. Why? Because everybody has a little thing or a backpack. And they're purple and they're pink and they're all kinds of cute things, and there's nothing in them, but they think they're really doing cool things. And then as they get a little older in their education, right, they have a backpack and they're going to secondary school or high school, and they've got a couple of books in there, and they've got, you know, a 2-week-old peanut butter sandwich, and they've got dirty socks and some shoes, and they've got a computer, and it's heavy, and they take it to school. And they get into university, and it gets even bigger and heavier. And now when we travel as business people, and almost all of us carry backpacks in a different way, right? It's just trendy and fashionable, so we carry backpacks. But the question is, what do you have in your backpack? As your adults, what do you have? What do you think you have in your backpack? Any ideas? How about hatred? How about bigotry? How about animosity? How about envy? How about jealousy? How about stupidity? How about bad life experiences? How about a failure? Will you recognize any of those things in your backpack? We got to clean out our backpacks before we can change. We got to clean out our backpacks before we can accelerate our life experience. We got to get rid of the junk that we carry around, and all of us carry around life experiences, not all of which were good. And we got them in that backpack. And I'm saying to you, as someone who's on the road back in life, if you want to know about the road ahead, talk to somebody who's on the road back. I'm on the road back. I've experienced all the things you've already experienced. So we've got to get rid of that backpack. Let me give you an example. I was looking at some financial statements a couple of years ago, and I saw from those financial statements there was some money missing in one of our businesses. And as I analyzed that and worked with others to figure that out, I came to the conclusion that my business partner of 27 and a half years, the executor of our estate, had stolen $80,000 from our business. Any of you ever been betrayed in your lifetime? Is that about the worst experience in the world, is betrayal? Because it hurts your gut, it hurts your heart, you can't sleep, your brain fatigues of it. I mean, it's a horrible feeling. I'd been betrayed by a man I trusted all those years. He was a multi-millionaire. There was no reason for him to steal money. If he'd asked me for $80,000, I would have given him $80,000. That's how much I trusted him. And yet, every time I looked at those financial statements, the only conclusion I could come to was that he had stolen money. And I didn't know why. And my wife, if she were here, she would tell you I didn't sleep for 5 days. I was just wandering around the house. I didn't know what to do about it. And she kept saying, as my best counselor and best friend, she kept saying, you got to forgive him. You got to forgive him. I said, I'm not going to forgive him. I'm going to kill him. Okay? I just felt so horrible about this. And of course, which is true 99% of the time, she was right. And I needed to forgive him. And so I invited him out to lunch. He did not know that I knew. And we sat down at lunch, and I put the financial statements out in front of him, and I said, you've stolen $80,000 from me. And I don't know why, and I'll never know why. But I want you to know that I forgive you. And I got up and walked out of that restaurant. When I walked through the door of that restaurant, it was like a 1,000-pound weight had been taken off my shoulders, because now the full accountability for his decision to steal rested on his shoulders. I had left it off mine. It no longer was going to bother me because I can do without $80,000, and it's his problem. About 2 months later, I got a 5-page letter. He was trying to explain to me what happened. He wants to be my friend again. He wants to be my partner again. And while he'll never be my partner again because of the breach of trust, we've worked really hard to reestablish the friendship, and we're doing pretty good at that. Because I think everybody deserves a second chance, even me, when I make my mistakes. But that was a rock in my backpack. If you sit here tonight, do you have rocks in your backpack? Is there a phone call you need to make to clear up a relationship? Is there a relative that you haven't been speaking to for a while? Is there a friend that you betrayed or breached the trust? Is there a parent that you don't have the best relationship with? Why don't you make that phone call? Why don't you go have that discussion? Why don't you lift the weight off your shoulders of that and put it squarely on someone else's? Get the rocks out of your backpack. Change is a catalyst for extraordinary opportunities. Until we make change, we can't have extraordinary success. We can't have extraordinary opportunities. Change is the reason that happens. We know that from athletics. We know that in sports. We know that certainly in business. We know it in politics. Oftentimes, the ability to acknowledge change and to make change is the reason we get better. Think about the great people you know. I would suggest to you most of them don't carry rocks in their backpack. The great people I've gotten to know have gotten rid of those things because they know it drains us emotionally and physically, and it sucks us down. And when we allow that to happen, you can't possibly be our best self. It doesn't work. It doesn't make sense. So our ability to do that helps us, frees us to become the person we ultimately want to become. We just have to adapt. So tonight when you go home, why don't you go challenge your status quo? Close the door, get in front of a full-length mirror, take off all your clothes, and just stand there and say, this is what I got, world. This is what I got to offer. That's it. Now, for some of you, that'd be very exciting. And for other of you, for some of you, it'd be very depressing. I mean, we just have to be face facts, right? It's just one of those things. But just confront yourself and say, these are the resources that I have to go through life with. I'm not the best looking. I'm not the tallest. Nobody would ever identify me as an NBA basketball player walking down the street. Never would happen. I don't look like an NBA player. But that didn't stop me from playing in the NBA. I had lots of people who said, just like Charles Lindbergh, just like other people said, we can't land a man on the moon. People said, no, you can't play. You're not tall enough. You're not strong enough. You don't jump high enough. You don't dribble well enough. You don't shoot well enough, whatever it is. What they forgot was I didn't believe them. I just went ahead and lived my dreams, my goals, my objectives, without regard to their thinking. Because you can't be in toxic relationships. You can't be in relationships that drag you down. And if you're in a toxic relationship right now where there are naysayers around you, where there are people who suck the energy out of your very soul, who are hard to be around, why are they in your life? Now, I acknowledge that sometimes we're married to them. You got to work at changing them. Show them a better path. Be the leader. Step up to it. Change the environment. You can do that. It happens all the time. All right? Embrace the possibility. Have you ever really stopped to think, I can be great? At something, I can be great. That greatness is inherent in you. And that's what you have. That's the opportunity you possess, okay? Never underestimate your power to change your life. I can't change your life. If I had a pill or a shot or something, a potion I could give you and change your life and be exactly what you want to be, I'd give it to you tonight. But that would be the easy way, wouldn't it? There's no easy way out. This is life, and it's hard. And so you got to step to it, you got to suck it up, you got to do it. So what you can do is just decide to be great. Life is about state of mind, nothing more, nothing less. It's when you get up in the morning. It's the person who jumps out of bed, as I said. Some people are ready and fired up and excited and happy, and some people crawl out of bed and can't believe they got to go another day. We decide. That's our mind that controls everything. There is a captain of the ship. It's here. We decide everything. Okay? So don't ever get into any of the naysayers. Be exactly what you want to be. So let's watch this and see if it helps us understand a little bit about human potential now. So what it takes to make that change and to be successful is courage. Because the easy thing to do is do what we've always done and to just keep doing and hope things change in your circumstance. And things won't change. You have to make the change. You have to decide that you want to be great. Thank you, Nikki. So now you've been sitting for a while, and we're going to go into the detail, the principles that you can start changing tomorrow and the tools that you can use tomorrow if you want to start changing your life. But we need a little exercise because you all are getting loggy and sloggy. You had a little drink. And so we're going to do a little exercise, a little drill right now. So what I want you to do is I'm going to ask you to just stand straight up, put your stuff on your chair behind you, and just stand up. Okay, kind of loosen up a little bit. This is a very rigorous physical exercise. Don't want you tearing anything. Come on, you guys are all athletes. Pop your tendons. You know, we don't want to do anything like that, okay?
Is this good video footage?
Yeah, this would be video footage if you want video footage, okay? If we want the ability to erase it if they can't do it well, okay? So I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. Don't do anything until I ask you to do it. Just listen to directions. First of all, I'm going to ask you to start clapping, and then you're going to clap rhythmically faster and faster and faster until you don't think you can clap your hands any faster. And the moment you reach that crescendo, I'm going to say, stomp your feet. And you're going to start stomping your feet. Now, this is a coordination drill. Can you clap your hands, stomp your feet simultaneously? It's very tough. You're going to clap your hands, stomp your feet, and then as you just build and build and build, you don't think you can go another second, I'm going to ask you to scream the word more, 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 as much as you can. Okay, you ready? You got that? Ready to go. Start clapping. Faster. 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 Stomp your feet. Come on, stomp your feet. Let it go. Let it go. More. 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 Now, when I call home tonight, and my wife says, how'd it go? I said, they are on their feet, clapping, stomping, yelling for more. Okay, so have a seat. You all are surprisingly uncoordinated. So now let's talk about the 5 great principles. I'll list them first, and then we'll go through them one by one, okay? The first is commit to a higher level of discipline than you've ever committed before in your life. There was just a list produced that said the most ridiculously successful people in the world do the following 13 things. And one of the first things listed was have a disciplined morning schedule. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So commit to a higher level of discipline. Now, I just looked across this audience, and I'm saying some of you could commit to a little higher level of discipline than you've done before. Okay, so let's leave it there. The second is live with purpose every day. We know research proves that those people who live with purpose are more successful than those who don't. So having purpose is really important. So purpose-driven lives becomes really important. Purpose-driven corporations are very important. Purpose-driven families are very important. Okay. The third, act with intent. Act with intent. Intentionality matters in everything that we do. Don't get swept along unintentionally by circumstances or people. Decide what you're going to do and then go do it. The next is make conscious choices about everything in your life. Make conscious. From what you wear, to what you drive, to the home you live in, to how you raise your kids, to what you do with your employees, to all that stuff. Make conscious choices. Don't live life unconsciously. And the last is engage in a cause greater than yourself. That's service to others, servant leadership. It's the whole notion of giving to others. Some see it as philanthropy. Not so. It's not writing checks. That's not what checks are easy. All of us can write checks. It's giving your time, energy, and effort to make something better and not getting paid for it. Okay? So let's go through them one by one. The first is this notion of committing to a higher level of discipline. Starts with your mindset. You really have to work at it every day, is to put your mind in a place to be successful every day. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not natural. Any more than LeBron James winning an NBA championship is just natural without work. Or Michael Jordan, or Tiger Woods, or a host of other athletes that we can think about. Michael Phelps, right? I'm sorry for naming all American athletes when I realize I'm in the presence of a country that has more medals as a percentage of population than any country on the face of the earth. So I applaud you for what you do in athletics. You're extraordinary. I've been here several times. I've seen the cricket test matches against India. I've seen you play the All Blacks. I've had some really interesting experiences. In fact, I was walking down a street in a difficult or poor section of Sydney one day, and there were a bunch of boys, young boys, 10, 12, 13 years old, playing cricket in the street. And of course, being Australians, they said, yeah, you want to play? And so I got my first opportunity to play cricket. I mean, it was so much fun with these little kids running around just on asphalt. It was great. It was really fun. Typical of the Australian mindset, being cordial and warm and hospitable. We have to change our mindset. We have to be really strong mentally. The next is exercise. But let's go back to mindset, because the one thing I wanted to mention is this 31-minute thing that I talked about earlier this evening for a moment. So about 40 years ago, I determined I had to have a morning routine. I had to be more disciplined. And so there's something I've been doing for 40 years. I do it every day. I flew into Sydney yesterday at 6:30 a.m., got to the hotel about 8 a.m., and boom, I did my 31-minute routine, and then I went to the gym and worked out. Okay? So here's an easy 31-minute drill if you want to do it. The first is, what do you do when you first wake up in the morning? Just shout out some things. What do you do when you first open your eyes and you sit up and so you know you're awake? What do you do? What are kind of the activities? Go to loo. Good. Yeah, that's important.
Drink water.
Do what? Drink water. Breathe.
Kiss my husband.
Kiss your husband. After seeing you, I can't see why. That's the best answer, of course. That's the right answer, right? All of you should have said that. But we walk the dog, we check our cell phone, we turn on TV, we read a newspaper, we go to the bathroom. There are a host of things. We all have things we do first thing in the morning. Yeah, and the cell phone is most important, right? Almost all of you have your cell phone by your bed, and you want to check that right away. So let me give you some data. 52% of what you get on the cell phone is negative. 73% of what you see on television is negative. 87% of what you read in newspapers is negative. Why would you, if you're trying to be great, why would you ingest anything that's negative in the morning? Why would you do that? I've never heard a good reason for that. And you do it because it's a stupid habit, and you haven't broken the habit. So that's one of the habits you have to break, is exactly what you do the first thing in the morning. So here's what I want you to do tomorrow morning. Do it for 90 days, and then you can send me an email or a text and tell me you're full of hogwash, it doesn't work, or it's changed my life. And I'll tell you, we have thousands of people all over the world doing it, and it's changed all of their lives, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is swing your legs out over the edge of the bed, sit on the edge of the bed, and ask yourself this question: why am I alive today? Meaning, what's my purpose today? What's my purpose today? Now, some days I have to be a great negotiator, and I focus on that. Some days I have to be a wonderful father, and I have to focus on that. Some days I have to be a great management team leader, and I focus on that. It depends on what's our highest and best use, what's our most important purpose for the day. Sometimes we have more than one big purpose in the course of a day. Focus on those. Don't focus on, I have to pick up the laundry. I have to get my car washed. The dog needs walking. Those are not great things. I know they may seem like great things to you. Those are not great things. Just trust me on that one, okay? Think about the big things in life. Think about the noble things you're going to do and accomplish. I've never been in a locker room with a group of athletes before a competition where we sat and told each other that we couldn't win. We're not good enough. That's what you do when you do some of the other habits that you have. You're robbing yourself of the opportunity to prepare your mind that day for greatness. You're missing the opportunity. So sit on the edge of bed, say, what's my purpose today? Why am I alive today? Get that fixed in your mind. Then find somewhere you can be really quiet, look out a window, turn on soft music, whatever you want to do, but be grateful. Just be grateful. An attitude of gratitude really matters. Grateful people are happier people. Okay? And some people say, well, I can't think of enough. I can't spend 10 minutes being grateful because I can't think of enough. Are you kidding me? If you're in this room and you can't think of 10 minutes of gratefulness? Family, children, home, cars, jobs, boats, planes, wait. Be happy. Be grateful for everything you got. The ability to walk and talk. Holy cow, there's so much to be grateful for. Be grateful. And then take 10 minutes after that, another 10 minutes, and read from an inspirational book. Don't read anything negative. Read something. You can read the Book of Thanks. You can read a book called Thank You. You can read Chicken Soup for the Souls. You can read from the Treasure Chest. I'm currently reading the 100 Greatest Speeches of All Time. So it's Mandela, it's Churchill, Mother Teresa, Gandhi. It's all the people we talked about earlier this evening. It's inspirational to me. It inspires me to read the great words of these fabulous leaders. But read something inspirational. In the last 10 minutes of your 31 minutes, you get your journal out. This is one of mine. I carry 3 or 4 of them with me because I journal every day and have for 45 years. All right? Write what's great about whatever. But don't write anything bad. Okay? Because who's going to get these after you die? Your children. They're going to have their own junk to deal with. They don't need your junk to deal with. Okay? Just write about great stuff. They need to see their parents as positive, upbeat, happy, constructive, good people that had great experiences. So tomorrow I might write about this group, depending on how it comes out tonight. Okay? I might write about this group. All right? I might write about a couple of people I met randomly today, just walking outside the hotel, with whom I had great conversation, terrific people. Just wonderful, wonderful people. And I had a couple of great thoughts when I was doing that. So just write in here. Now I have 45 years of my father's journals that I can read what he did and how he thought every day for 45 years. You don't think that means something to a son? His only son? My dad died really young, but I've got his journals. Okay? If I die tonight, our children will have nearly 45 years of journals of mine. And so that's the legacy that I'm going to leave them. It's simply my thoughts about life, about circumstances, about incidences, about people, right? And those are the kind of gifts that we want to leave. Those are the kind of things we want to do for people.
I want to read those books because I reckon there's some pretty cool stories in there.
Yeah, there are some really cool stories in there. There's stuff I've written about the White House that have never been, are not known, and have never been published. People, the book companies come to me every year asking me, is this the year you're ready to write your book? But I promised the President of the United States when I went to work for him that I would not kiss and tell, that I would not talk about those confidential situations that existed in the White House. You know today that everybody writes a book. As soon as they leave the White House, they write a book, right? Now you talk about greed and money. It's all about greed and money. It has nothing to do with about telling the truth or anything else. It's all about greed and money. So maybe we'll share a couple of those circumstances. No, we can't tonight because we're being filmed. So we won't talk about those tonight. Maybe we'll turn that off and talk about them later, okay? All right? So now you got your 31 minutes into your day. Where do you think your mind is? It's positive. It's upbeat. You're looking forward to the day. It's fantastic. You're fixed on your most important priorities, your highest purpose. You're going. This is great. Now you're going to do the hardest thing you've done all day. You're going to go exercise. First of all, exercise in the morning is about 50% better than exercise at night. Why? Because you're tired at night. You have energy in the morning, you're tired at night. But you want to get your blood circulating, right? You want the release of certain chemicals in your body. All that's going to help you be successful during the course of the day. So you want to exercise in the morning. Now, the average adult needs about 150 to 160 minutes of rigorous exercise every week. That's 3 to 4 times, 30 minutes at a pop. You ought to be able to do that. Or take 7 days a week and spread out 18 minutes. However you need to do it, get exercise. Right? How many bodies do we get in this life? Yeah, we just get that one in, and that's really too bad. I tried to do a full body transplant, but I couldn't get anybody to do it for me. Okay? But I had to transplant my hips because my hips wore out. I was running triathlons and marathons and playing basketball and tennis and all that kind of stuff. Pretty soon my hips wore out, so I have 2 artificial hips. Right? But I had the kind put in that make keep you active, so I still play nationally competitive tennis. I do some other things. So it's a lot of fun. Now, when these wear out, I'm going to have to get new ones. And I got a bunch of guys my age who are dying. And they have artificial hips. So I figure I can take those hips out of there and I can pop them in here. I can save money. So I can get them for about $5,000. Each new hip costs about $75,000. So you got to get exercise. Do the exercise that's best for you. There's no right exercise for all of us. Find that unique exercise that works for you. Some of it's yoga, some of it's running, some of it's weight training, some of it's a combination, cycling, whatever it is. Do what works for you to maintain your body, because about age 32, 33, you begin to suffer from muscle loss, bone density loss. That stuff all really occurs. And no matter you think you're the exception, you're not the exception. You start a state of decline in your mid-30s, it will continue unabated unless you do something about it, which is lifting weight and strengthening your cardiovascular system and eating the right foods to strengthen your bones. So that's just kind of basic stuff, right? So we got to start doing that stuff, all right? So exercise is next. Then you want to get home, you shower, you clean up, you help the kids get ready and so forth. Now all of you have an excuse for not doing this, don't you? Oh, we have little kids. They like to come down and snuggle in the morning. What are we going to do about the little kids? And you probably all have 1, 2, or 3 children, right? You don't really have a family yet. We have 7. What do you know about parenting? Come on. We had 7 kids that came down and snuggled in bed with us, right? They all like to snuggle with their mom and dad early in the morning. So get up an hour earlier. Get up an hour earlier. You're either dedicated or you're not. You're either committed to greatness or you're not. Stop using excuses. We could go down row after row after row and you'd all have great excuses, right? Well, that's fine. That doesn't lead you to greatness. That doesn't make you different. That doesn't make you exceptional. Excuses are just to be blown away, all right? They're just, I don't take excuses seriously. Just like all of you think because your child isn't playing a lot of minutes for the soccer coach, you think it's the coach's fault. And your student's not doing quite as well in class as they should be doing. It's got to be the teacher's fault. Couldn't be your student, could it? Couldn't be your child. And all of you, when the child comes off the sports court, whatever they're doing, basketball, tennis, soccer, football, you tell them what a great athlete they are. And the child knows you're lying to them most of the time. Most of the time. Because there are only 1% of those kids on that field that are great. Only 1%. Okay? So let's be realistic and honest. Let's get ourselves in shape and let's teach our children how to stay in shape. Okay? Let's stop making excuses in life. The next thing you got to do is put the right fuel in your body. If you want to know what the victory diet is, it's really simple. 50 to 60% complex carbohydrates. 20 to 30% lean meat. 10% fat. 48 to 60 ounces of water per day. Reduce your total intake of sugar. Early to bed and early to rise makes a healthier body. Makes you healthy, wealthy, and wise. Right? You know that old adage? Okay, then why aren't you doing it? Oh, that's right, you got excuses. I forgot, you got excuses. Okay. So you got to eat the right foods. Within 30 minutes of working out, you need some protein in your body. There are some diets today that are intermittent fasting. I don't know if some of you are doing intermittent. I'm currently doing intermittent fasting. I eat an evening meal at 6 o'clock. I eat again about 1 or 2 o'clock the next day, and then I eat an evening meal. I snack all along the way. But during the period of fasting from 6 in the evening until noon, I eat nothing at all. I drink only water. Okay? We all choose our own poison. We all decide how we're going to do it, but there are a lot of different ways of getting it done. Let's just commit to something and do it and stay with it. It's like those New Year's resolutions that we all make. Boy, comes January 1st, we're all going to change, right? We're going to get to the gym. We're going to eat the right foods, and that lasts till about January 5th, right? And then we got excuses again and excuses again. And we can't figure out why our lives aren't exactly the way we want them. It's because we're not doing the things you have to do to be successful, okay? So that's really important, all right? And I'll apologize in advance for offending you. I'm going to come right at you because you're not doing everything you're supposed to be doing, and you're not doing everything to be great. And all of you should be up here doing this 20 years from now. All of you should be leading others because of the exemplary life that you've led for yourself and your family. Instead of sitting in the audience absorbing it, you should be teaching these classes. Okay? That's how powerful you are, and you won't recognize that. You need to get off your duff and get going. Okay? Lastly, then, is scheduling time. Remember, we talked about the value of time when we first started, how important it is. The most important commodity you have is the value of time. You got to get it right. You got to schedule right. And it's minutes and seconds. It's just like wealthy people don't count $100 bills, they count pennies. All right? Just like people who understand time don't count hours, they count minutes. And so look at how much time you're wasting and not. So scheduling is really important, and if we have time, I brought some stuff with me. I'll show you what we created for the President of the United States. It's really simple, and show you that you can use that in your personal life. You've all got time management systems, and I understand that, and I'm sure they're all really effective and good. I'll show you one that's better, and it'll make you really successful, okay? All right. So any questions on committing to a higher level of discipline? Just have to do it. How many of you think you're absolutely exercising these 4 things perfectly right now? Anybody? I'm sure some of you are doing all of this, some of this. Why don't you just keep this in mind, take a picture of it, get a copy of it, whatever you want to do, but you want to get this done, okay? Let's go to the second one. This is just a reminder, right? When you correct your mind, everything else falls in place. Your mind takes control of everything. Your body never quits, your mind quits. If you're in a race and you're running and you get tired, it's your mind that quits. Your body never quits. Your body will just keep going. It's very rarely seen in sports where the body actually quits and the mind wants to keep going. Okay? Life is a state of mind. All right, let's go to the second one. Live with purpose every day. So people ask me, why do I do this? Why am I in Brisbane tonight? Why am I not home with our family? And I worried about that myself sometimes. And I never traveled when my kids were young. And as they got older, I began to travel more, expand our business operations. And then we became a global company and multiple global companies and so forth when the kids went to college and began their own lives and families. In the last 10 years, I've traveled more than I ever have in my life, probably. But so a lot of people ask me, well, why are you here and why do you do this? And I found a poem a few years ago that in my mind tells me why I do this, and maybe it'll resonate with you. An old man, that's me, going a lone highway, came at evening cold and gray, to a chasm vast and deep and wide. The old man crossed in the twilight din. The sullen stream had no fear for him, but he turned when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you're wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. You'll never again pass this way. You've crossed the chasm deep and wide. Why build this bridge at evening tide? The builder lifted his old gray head. Good friend, in the path I have come, he said. There followeth after me today a youth whose feet must pass this way. This chasm that's been naught to me, to that fair-haired youth may a pitfall be. He too must cross in the twilight din. Good friend, I'm building the bridge for him. My lot in life is to build the bridge. I believe in the Chinese model of a 100-year life. The first 25 years you grow, the second 25 years you learn, the third 25 years you produce, and the last 25 years you give back. I'm in the big give back phase of my life, and anything I can help you do better, anything I can attribute to you that would be good, and I can give you that as a gift. That's important to me. Live with purpose every day. My purpose is to build bridges. So all of you who have your personal vision statement, if you just pull it out of your pocket, out of your purse, whatever you want to do, and stand up and read it to us, I'd really appreciate it. So let's say there are 100 people or more in the room. None of you have a personal vision statement? Reminds me of Alice in Wonderland when Alice was going down the road, and she was very happy until she came to a fork in the road. And she was really confused. She didn't know where to go. Finally, the Cheshire Cat appeared. May I help you? Alice said, I'm confused. I don't know where to go. I don't know which road to take. And the cat asked her that quintessential question. Where are you going? If you don't know where you're going, any road will do. If you know where you're going, there's only one road. You got to have a vision statement. You have to figure out where you're going with your life. Write a personal vision statement. My personal vision statement is to improve the human condition wherever I find it. So it's led us to own a lot of healthcare companies, a lot of social service companies, right? So it leads us to where we can do the most good or where we're going to be most successful. So write a personal vision statement. It should be both aspirational and inspirational, okay? So let's ask the same question. I'm sure you must have family vision statements. all of you who have a family vision statement, just go ahead. Don't fight. Don't fight. Just go ahead and stand up. Read your family vision statement. All right. Do you have it with you?
Warren, I told you a fib before. I have a personal one. I was too embarrassed to stand up.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Tell me what it is.
The family one or the personal one?
Either your choice.
I'll read you the family one.
Okay.
Our family mission. All family members are equally important. All family members contribute. We do everything with fun and passion. We treat others as we want to be treated. We strive to live with respect, honesty and integrity. We aim for life balance, work, leisure, health, finance, learning and mistakes. Money helps us live a nice life, but it's not as important as love. We aim to build wealth, but not to the detriment of health and happiness. We spend time together as a family. We manage our own moods and understand it's okay to be grumpy on occasion. We respect privacy and time for self. We accept and support other family members at all times. We stretch our comfort zone, like standing up, try new things and aim to grow. We communicate with each other. We take responsibility for our own action and don't blame others. We appreciate and show our gratefulness. We aim to be always positive. We accept that making mistakes are part of life and help us grow. We aim for a loving family atmosphere. We set goals. We try to be better people every day. Love is important. We won the birth lottery and we are privileged to lead amazing lives.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Good job. So it can be short, it can be long, it has to be you, and it should reflect you. So you all are invited to come to our home in Tucson, Arizona anytime you like. We live on a little farm in the middle of the city. We have goats and pigs and sheep and chickens. I grew up on a farm. We wanted our children to grow up on a farm, so 45 years ago we bought a farm. It just happens to be in the middle of the city. So we've got 60 acres, and we got horses and all that kind of stuff. We can ride to the mountains without ever crossing a street. It's a fun place to raise kids, and so all of our kids and our grandkids, as I said, live there with us now. And so we sat down with our 7 children, 9 of us around the table, and we decided to write a family vision statement. The youngest one was 3, the oldest one was 16, 17. The 3-year-old didn't contribute very much. He kind of drooled a lot and wanted more food and scribbled a lot, but didn't contribute. We put 3x5 cards, a pile of them in front of each child, each adult, and we asked them to write words down that describe our family as a starting point. So they write joy, happiness, beatings, floggings, whatever they wrote. And so they wrote this stuff, and then we had about 250 words when we got done, and so we started comparing words. Do we mean joy or do we mean happiness? Words that sound alike, have similar meanings. And then we condensed that down to about 50 words, and then we asked the family who should write the first draft, and they decided our oldest son and I should do that, so we went off and wrote the first draft. They came back, and we read it to them. We thought it was brilliant. Of course, they went thumbs down. And then we read it, we wrote it 3 or 4 or 5 more times, probably 10 times in total, until everybody said, yep, that's us, that's our family. And so when you come to our home, when you open the front door, it hangs in a framed, large printout. So all you have to do is read this, and you'll know what our family's all about. And I'll read this to you in a second. And so we have that hanging there, and then we have our family values by the back door, because that's where the kids come and go most of the time, and the grandchildren most of the time. And so they, when there's a conflict or there's difficulty or a challenge, we take them to that value statement, and we see whether or not their behavior is consistent with the values we have. These are great teaching moments for your family. I hope you'll take it seriously. How many of you have vision statements for your business? You should all have business statements for your business. How many of you have value statements for your business? If you don't, you need to work more on your culture. Okay? Great cultures all have those. All right? So why wouldn't you have them in your home? If your business is so important that you would have them there, how important is your family? I guess it's not as important as your business. Would you really make that statement? Because I could ask any one of you, what's the most important thing in your life? Every one of you would say family. Every one of you. That's a conditioned response. Oh, it's family. But if I analyzed your time, I'd call you a liar. Because you're not spending enough time with your family, okay? You think that working 14, 15, 16 hours a day is going to get it done? It doesn't get it done. It may acquire more wealth, but it won't save a family. If you can't get it done in 8 to 10 hours a day, go do something else. If you're really a good CEO, get it done in 8 to 10 hours a day. Stop your business at 6 o'clock at night. Go home with your family and have dinner. Help put the kids to bed. Okay? Get stuff done that's important. Live with purpose every day. So here's our statement. And these words only mean something to us. It doesn't mean anything to anybody else. And we don't care if you like it or dislike it, because this is our family. Okay? We created this statement. To be an eternally sealed family, that concept means we never want to be separated. Divorce is off the table. Never going to happen. Okay? It's not a consideration, which helps each member reach their potential. Oh my gosh, now there's an accountability. I got to help my sibling reach their full potential. Oh, goodness gracious. Through unconditional love. That doesn't mean conditional love, it means unconditional love. You know what conditional love is? Oh, if you'll clean up your toys, I'll love you more. You start teaching that in your home, you got problems. You start putting conditionality on love and on family, you're going to have a hard road to go. Okay? Unconditional love. Respect for differences. Are all your children exactly alike? You're lying if you said they would. They're all different. Every child is different. The second is noticeably different than the first. The third, too. But none of you can get to 7. So, anybody have 7 children here? We got 7 different creatures living in our house. It's just unbelievable. It's like having cockroaches and stuff. It's an amazing thing. Okay? Respect for differences. We're all are committed to lead Christ-centered lives. That happens to be a statement of faith by our family, and which serves as a protective shield for all who dwell within, meaning that when they're in the home, they are protected. Nothing bad will happen to a member of our family in our home. We're not going to yell at them. We're not going to slap them. We're not going to beat them. We're not going to denigrate them. We're not going to psychologically abuse them. Our home is a healthy place and a safe place to be always. The world out there is a tough place. And our kids are getting beaten up in there. Social media, bullying, all kinds of crap going on out there. And our homes have to be absolutely ironclad in regard to the safety of our family. All the time, always. Mom and Dad, stop yelling at each other. Start loving each other. Be the example your children have to be good grown adults. Okay? So we got challenges ahead of us. We got to do better. We have to do better. And stop thinking you're the center of the universe, because you're not. How about a little humility? A group of national historians in the United States recently studied global leaders. Leaders of some of the names, both past and present, that we've talked about here tonight. What do you think was the number one quality needed for great leadership? Number one quality.
Thinking of others.
Thinking of others. It's a good one. Not number one, but a good one. Others that you can think of?
Listening.
Discipline.
No, listening or hearing.
Listening. That was number 2. Listening's number 2. Okay? Humility's number 1. Humility. And that's not one I would necessarily think of most leaders. Certainly not the current occupiers of the White House in the United States. Okay? And maybe a couple of your prime ministers. But this whole notion of that it starts with humility. That we aren't the center of the universe. We're just one piece of we're a spoke in the wheel. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? So, write those vision statements. Really important to do. Something we ought to be having done. And write your value statement. So our mantra is this: no success in life compensates for failure in the home. It doesn't matter how big a business we build, no matter how good we think we are, no matter how exceptional our bank account is. In the end, if we lose our family, if we lose all that's important to us along the way, then we've lost too much. We believe family is first in everything, and we demonstrate that by our priorities and how we schedule. When we had paper schedules, I would always write the family things down first in red ink. Everything else is written in pencil, because it can be erased and moved. But none of the family things could be moved. When I was chosen as Father of the Year, and I apologize for mentioning that, but it's instructive. When I was chosen as Father of the Year, unbeknownst to me, they interviewed all 7 of our children and played those 7 interviews in front of 1,000 people the night I got the award. And I was scared to death what they might say. And they asked the same question to all 7. And all 7 used different words, but addressed the same question in the same way. The question is, what do you remember most about your dad? So if you as dads were asked that, what would your children say?
He was always there.
He was always there. That's what our children said. He was always there. He was always there. He was at every baseball game. He was at every parent-teacher conference. He was at every recital. He showed up all the time. When I looked up in the stands, he was there. I never had to think that he wouldn't be there. Okay? So all 7 of them said that, which was interesting. The other thing they said was the only thing he talks about is family. So we shut off, some of you may know this, but we don't take phone calls, business phone calls at home. We have dinner every night together as a family. Do clients want to have business with me sometimes at night? Yep. But we have late dinners. I'm happy to tell a client, you know, I'm great, I'll just can't wait to have dinner with you. How about 8 o'clock? Which gets me home at 5:30 or 6 o'clock to have dinner with the family and help put them to bed. We can work around any situation, any circumstance. But don't use business as an excuse not to be with your family, not to lead your family. All too many of us are just using that as an excuse. I know you're all building businesses. Guess what? I was there. My first business was $1 million business. My second one was about 5. Then I went to 10, then to 50, then to hundreds, and then to billions. Right? But we all started the same place. Fighting to make payroll, trying to cut our costs, firing employees, trying to hire the right ones, finding channels of distribution, getting products out the door, putting stamps on envelopes. We all have done that stuff, right? But we end up in different places. And we need to get to the right place, okay? And we need to get there for the right reasons. Okay, let's look at the next one. Act with intent, meaning intentionality really matters. Strategy is everything. You got to get strategy right. Strategy for your business, strategy for your family, strategy for life. You have to get strategy right. If you can be great at execution, but if you're executing against a bad strategy, you won't be successful. So strategy really matters. And several of us were talking about this earlier this evening. What do we mean by strategy? What do we think about strategy? Strategy is the bigger thinking. Strategy is how you get to your vision. It's the overarching things you have to get and do. It's the imperatives in what you do. Okay? And then you list activities under strategy. There are activities that you have to do to execute strategy, but strategy is the big piece. And you got to get strategy right, and you have to get strategy right for your family. Okay? Life is not chance, it's premeditation. Design your life. I do a lot of speaking, a lot of lecturing on how to design your life. How to actually live the life you want to live, as opposed to the one you might be living now. If you could change your life, you had a clean sheet of paper tonight and you could design that life, would it be exactly the one you're living now, or would it be different? I think in almost every case there's some differences. But live the life you want to live. Why would you do differently? Drive the car you want to drive, live in the house you want to live in, wear the clothes you want to wear. That's what makes you happy. We're designed to be happy. Let's be happy. Let's do what we want to do. Okay? So all of us have the capability of doing that. Let's just live the life we want to live. Okay? Intentionality matters in all things. All things. Four, make conscious choices. Stephen Covey once said there are 3 great moments of truth. The first is when you decide what your core beliefs and values are. The second is when you commit to those core beliefs and values. And the third is when you act on those core beliefs and values. There are a lot of people who say, this is what I believe, and then you watch them, and it's not how they act. Don't ever believe that what goes on in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. That's the biggest nonsense in the world. It all comes out, right? So this notion that you can keep secrets, you can't keep secrets, right? You got to live life with truth, transparency, and honesty. We have to be vulnerable in that process. It's all the things we learn in EO, and we especially in Forum, right? So we have to know those moments of truth. And then we have to live that life. Why? Because we're modeling behavior for our children. We're modeling behavior for our employees. We're modeling behavior for members of the community with whom we interact. We are constantly modeling. Why are we modeling? Because we are leaders. That's what we do. That's what we were born to do. That's what entrepreneurs are. We initiate, we lead. And therefore, we have to lead with integrity. It's not enough to be a good leader. You have to be a leader for good. It's just not enough to be a good leader. There are lots of good leaders, but there aren't enough leaders for good. You and I are the difference makers. We have to decide. Our behavior really matters. There are a lot of decisions we have to make in life. Marriage, family, alcohol, drugs, ethics, values. Those are all tough choices. We have to decide. I decided to make some decisions only once. And that decision was when I knelt down and I asked my wife to marry. Remember, after 54 weeks, I didn't know she'd go out with me. And so finally I had to get the courage to ask her to marry me. So I knelt down, had the ring, and I wasn't sure what she was going to do. And so finally she said yes, and I was just overjoyed that I had one more question. I said, honey, I'm only going to be married once. How about you? She's okay. I'm in for the long haul. And that's how we've been married 55 years. So this notion of alcohol and drug, I grew up in an era where athletics was tough, and it was on the borderline where alcohol and drugs were being introduced to athletes. And I decided I wanted to be the best athlete I could be given whatever my potential was. And as a result of that, we decided that I was never going to drink alcohol. I wasn't going to do drugs. To this day, I don't know what alcohol tastes like. Never done drugs, never smoked a cigarette, just because that was my choice. I made the decision once. I didn't have to go to every party thinking, am I going to get drunk tonight or not? Am I going to do drugs tonight or not? Because I just decided I was never going to do it. I'd make the decision one time. Okay? Ethics and values in business and life are the same way. Am I going to be dishonest today or honest today? Right? Which one am I going to be? What is my integrity level? Let's be sure we make those choices and be conscious about those choices, okay? So that's important. So I was working with President Ford, and we had a tennis group at the White House that played. My partner was a guy named George H.W. Bush. You may have heard of him. He had a pretty good life at the time. He was leading the CIA. And we liked to play tennis, and Don Rumsfeld and the president were on one side of the net, and George Bush and I were on the other side of the net, and we're all fiercely competitive and battling, hitting the ball hard and trying to kill each other. And Don Rumsfeld had a short lob. I was at the net on one side. The president was at the net on the other side. And short lob came up, took a couple of steps back, and being a young athlete, 29 years old, I hit the ball as hard as I could possibly hit it. Going to put it away, feel really good about it. Unfortunately, went off my racket at kind of a strange angle, hit the President of the United States right in the diaphragm. He went down like a bull moose, shot with a .30-06, flat on his face. And I thought to myself, I've just killed the president with a tennis ball. It's a terrible feeling to kill the president with a tennis ball. So we rushed over to him. The Secret Service came over. When we got to him, there were no vital signs. He was not breathing. And I'm thinking, now I'm unemployed. This is not a good day for me. And so finally he's spitting and wheezing and coughing, and he gets up and he dusts himself off, and he grabs the nearest Secret Service agent, points to me and said, kill him. Decisions you get to make once. I said, Mr. President, you only get to make that decision once. How about we think about this? So we had a good discussion and a good laugh about it. It's this notion of the same thing that happened in a movie, 127 Hours. Did any of you see the movie 127 Hours? It's kind of an interesting movie. Young 21-year-old kid, outdoor kid, lived in Zion National Park, and decided on his day off that he was going to go back and do some rappelling all by himself. Didn't tell his girlfriend, didn't tell his parents, didn't tell his boss. Hopped in his truck, boom, went back, parked his truck, hiked back in, started rappelling, boom, boom, boom. Stuff collapsed around him, all that kind of stuff, and he ends up standing on a boulder, upright, with his arm pinned to the wall, with a boulder resting against it. He tries to pull it out, can't pull it out. He has a backpack on, he has a camera in there, he's got a knife in there, so he gets the knife out and starts chipping away, and he realizes a hand knife isn't going to chip away a big sandstone boulder. So he's stuck there for a while. So over the course of 2 or 3 days, he actually records his thoughts, takes pictures, tells his girlfriend how sorry he is he's not going to be able to marry her and have children, talked to his parents and said what a jerk he's been and how arrogant and cocky he's been. He apologized for the life that he's led so far, apologized to his employer, apologized to others, making amends because he knew he was going to die there. Soon he came to the resolution that there was one way out. What was that? Cut his arm off. So he got that same dull pocket knife out. And he could get through the muscle okay, but he couldn't get through the bone, so he had to leverage his body weight in order to break his arm. So he got through the bone, then he had to get through the tendons and the nerves. And if you had tendon damage or nerve damage, you know it's really painful, so he had to cut through that. But when he cut back, he kind of fell back against the other boulder. Yes, his arm was there, but he was really a new person, a different person. And if you go see the movie or rent it on Netflix or want to get it and see 127 Hours, it's a pretty interesting story of redemption and change, transformation of a young man. He's written a great book. You ought to have him here to speak sometime. He's really a pretty interesting character. So he now is married, has 2 kids, does great. I just think this thing about making decisions is really important. And sometimes we have to cut off our arm to get where we want to go, metaphorically speaking. And last, in serving others, helping others. If you're having a bad day, go help somebody who's really having a bad day. Go help somebody who doesn't have food, doesn't have a place to sleep tonight. Tell you a story about Lewis. Every day when I work out at home, I go to the same convenience store to get Gatorade. I know the clerks, I know everybody there, and I went in and got some Gatorade, and I came out, and there was a young homeless man that I hadn't seen before. He had all of his belongings in a little case. He had ratty clothes on, white t-shirt, blue jeans, long blonde hair, blue eyes. And so I went back in, got another Gatorade, and took it to him. It was a hot day in Arizona, and he refused it. And every day I went there, he was there every single day, and he'd sit out there 12, 15, 16, 18 hours a day. And each day I went and I'd offer him food. One day I offered him my phone and I said, do you have someone you'd like to call? And he said, I have no one to call. But he rejected me almost every time. And then one day after months I went there and he was there no longer. And so I asked the clerks, where'd he go? And they said, well, we don't know. He left one day with a young man. And I said, well, what happened? He said, well, there was this kind of middle-aged, curly-haired woman who came in, and she walked out, and she seemed to talk with him really easily. And as it got colder in the desert, she got him a new bag and put his clothes in. She got him some new clothes so he's warm, got him a sub-zero sleeping bag so he wouldn't get frozen at night. He lived under a bridge about 150 meters from the store. And so he did okay in the wintertime, and they seemed to really converse a lot. And then one day a young man, also with curly hair, came in, and he walked out and started talking to him. And they really seemed to hit it off, and they had really engaging conversations. And one day they just got up and got in the young man's car and drove away. I said, well, that's an interesting story. I wonder what happened. And so I kept going back to get my Gatorade. And one day I reached in to get my Gatorade, and as I looked to the left, I saw someone standing there. I looked to my left, and there were those piercing blue eyes that I'd seen on Lewis out in front. Those blue eyes, though, were a little different because his hair was cut. He had a three-piece suit on, wearing wingtip shoes, tie and a white shirt. I said, Lewis? He said, yeah. He said, I wasn't very nice to you. I wouldn't take your food, and I wouldn't use your cell phone, and I wasn't in a place where I could communicate with you. I said, well, look at you. Three-piece suit, white shirt, tie. Tell me your story. He said, well, there was this lady who came in, and she reminded me of my mother. And we just started talking, and I felt I could talk with her, and she was just such a good listener, and she was so kind and helped me through so many things, got me clothes and a bag and all kinds of stuff, helped me get through the winter. And then a young man came in one day, and we just hit it off. And he was my age, and he could relate to me, and he could help me. And one day he just said to me, you know, if you're ready, Lewis, I think I know some people who can help you. And I said, okay, I was ready. And I got in the car and I went with him, and he introduced me to a social service agency, and I met a psychologist, and they helped me unburden myself and unpeel the onion and just talk about stuff. And I said, whoa, suit, white shirt, tie. He said, yeah, I'm working for Raytheon Missile Systems in the Human Resource Department. I'm getting married in 2 weeks. I said, that's fantastic. I'm so happy for you. And I went home so excited to tell my family around the dinner table. And as I told the story, I came to the understanding that the curly-haired woman who had helped him was my wife. And the young man who had helped him was our son, Garrett. I think life is about not talking about service. It's about doing service to others. There's so many people in the world that need your help. So many people only you can help. I couldn't unlock that young man, but my wife could, and our son could. We have windows of opportunity in our life. We have to go through them to the other side. We can't say no. Say yes to life every time. Help people every time. Service above self is critical. Community and country, golly, our countries are going through tough times. We need citizen patriots. We need people in our country who are going to do what our politicians won't do. We need to care for each other. We need to care for our communities. We got to stop criticizing and start doing. We need to be positive and optimistic. Australia is one of the greatest countries in the world. You're one of the greatest people in the world, all 25 million of you. You have an unlimited future. Stop carping and complaining and whining and all that stuff and get about doing good things and building a great country. That's what entrepreneurs do. Go get after it. I'll do the same thing in the United States. If you'll promise me you'll do it here, I'll work my butt off to make our community better, our families better, our society better. Government is government, all right? But let's not get caught up in that. Countries are made up of great people who do great things for each other. And when we do that, we can do anything. There's a concept I'd like you to remember called lift where you stand. What that means is, regardless of where you find yourself in life, lift other people to a higher place. Maybe it's the people who are on the wait staff here tonight. A handshake or a smile or a thank you, a please. Maybe that makes them feel better. Maybe you might ask them their name. Why are they waiting on us? What are they doing? Show an interest in people. Don't be blind. Don't allow in your society there to be invisible people. Invisible people are those who are not recognized by the status quo because they're dirtier than. They're not as good as. They're poorer than. Those are the very people that need our help. Those are the Lewises in our lives. And we have to be able to step up to help them. We're capable of that. We need to do that. Lift where you stand. Every time you're around someone, elevate them to a higher position by what you say and how you treat them. Be a respecter of people, because every human deserves our respect. And when we do that, we change society. It's not haves and have-nots. It's us together that have to live together, work together, play together, and run governments together that are going to change societies. Well, as we draw to a close, there's an old Chinese group that says, if you hear it, you'll forget it. For those of you who are just sitting here tonight, you'll forget 80% of what I said within 72 hours. For those of you that took notes and could read those notes, you have the opportunity of remembering it and being reminded for a longer period of time. But for those of you who go out and do what I've suggested you do, you'll fully understand what I'm talking about. But only the doers will know that understanding. There are 4 things once gone that never return in your life. Think about that. 4 things that once pass you by never come back. Sped arrow, the spoken word, the wasted second, and the neglected opportunity. The sped arrow is the act of violence. Once committed, you can never take back. The spoken word are those angry things that you say that hurt someone's heart. No matter how much you apologize, they're indelibly imprinted upon that heart. The wasted second are the 86,400 seconds we get every day, and we're frivolous about the time in our lives. And the neglected opportunity is when the door to opportunity knocks. If we have failed to prepare, we will not recognize opportunity when it presents itself. But if we continue to learn, if we grow and learn, if we learn trust and respect, if we continue to move forward, we will recognize that opportunity and we'll know what to do. So we want to close with this video. And I'll make one more comment when we finish, if we can get this started. Look, you and I are warriors in life. We need to raise other people up to be with us, and we need to come to the rescue of our children when they need it. This reminds me of my father, who died at an early age, who wasn't there when I needed to be propped up, but saved me every time he did. We need to be that kind of parent. We need to come to the aid of our children. We need to raise up each other in marriage and partnership. We need to raise our business up, our colleagues in our business, because of who we are, how we conduct ourselves, and what we stand for. You and I are the difference makers in this world. Don't let this opportunity pass you by. Leave here tonight and decide to change things in your life. They're going to make the best you can be. Be the best possible person. Thank you for allowing me to be with you tonight.